It burns a little bit. Hey, what's going on everybody? From HomeGrounds, I'm Stephen Holm and you're watching HomeGrounds. It's the show with hot questions and even hotter coffee, and today we are joined by Steve Holm. He's a self-proclaimed coffee expert with a vivacious personality that's been described as boring, annoying, hipster, depressed, and always baked. Check out the HomeGrounds YouTube channel for brewing tutorials, equipment reviews, and stupid videos like this that only his mom will watch. Steve Holm, welcome to the show. It's an honor to be here, Stephen. Now before we begin, I should let you know that we reached out to some of our viewers for interview questions, and not a single person asked the question about you as a person. So instead we'll just be asking coffee-related questions that hopefully you can answer. That is actually a bit of a relief. Thank you all so much. I'm excited for this opportunity. Now Steve, something you say a little too often in your videos is that you're helping people brew and enjoy better quality coffee right at home. But today we're going to change that up a bit. We're going to help you brew and enjoy hotter coffee right at home. Have you ever had spicy coffee? Surprisingly, I have not, but people seem to like watching me try things that I don't enjoy, so that is why we are here today. Wow, that's really brave of you. And what is your spice tolerance like? I usually opt for like medium spicy levels, so I'm not sure how I'll handle these coffees and how spicy hot liquid will feel going down my throat. So the coffees we're enjoying today are from Roasty Buds Coffee out of Austin, Texas. Not sponsored in any way. Now, they have a typical coffee lineup, but they also have these three coffees that add varying levels of spiciness, and this first one is using Hatch chili pepper. Let me just say that smelling this, it smells a lot spicier than the coffee itself smells, which hopefully is a good sign. Cheers. So let's hop right into the questions. Now, like we said before, one of the missions for HomeGrounds is to help people brew and enjoy better quality coffee. And for someone that's just getting interested in coffee, maybe just wanting to start to improve their coffee setup at home, what do you think are some of the easiest ways for them to, right now, start making better coffee at home? Great question, Stephen. Well, first I would say to probably just focus on the quality of ingredients, meaning the coffee beans and the water. Because we can spend all this time and money on fancy equipment, but if you're not starting off with coffee that you actually enjoy drinking, you're not going to magically transform it into something incredible. So that being said, I would recommend going to a local coffee roaster and just trying some different coffees and figuring out what you like. That's really great advice. Let's say I have a friend who lives out in the middle of nowhere with no local coffee roasters. Where should they go then? Well, there are some great coffee subscription services out there. Some of them work with roasters all over the country and they'll send different coffees from different roasters every month, or some subscriptions actually roast themselves and still you get to try different coffees from them. So even if you don't live near a coffee roaster, there are still great ways to buy great coffee. And then you also mentioned focusing on the quality of water. So why does it matter whether I just use the water coming out of my kitchen sink versus an expensive water filter? So coffee is 98 to 99% water. So this cup of spicy coffee that we're drinking right now is almost all water. So the taste of that water really matters. Not just because water has a taste that will impart into the cup of your coffee, but also water has minerals that bring out certain flavors in coffee. So there are a few different ways that you can go about getting better quality water right at home. First off, you can just use some sort of filter. So that could be a filter pitcher or a filter in your kitchen sink, just any way to get rid of any of the bad stuff that might be in your tap water. Next, you could maybe also use bottled water, but I don't recommend using any single-use plastics, so we'll avoid that. But then moving up from there and taking it up a notch, you can do what a lot of coffee shops do, and that is using some sort of water filtration system just for coffee. Now, those can be really expensive because there's a lot of different parts, There are also other options like, say, third wave water, which are little packets with minerals that you would add to distilled or reverse osmosis water to get perfect water for coffee brewing. And so as long as you start with good quality beans and water, you are on your way to making great coffee. And from there you can look at getting a grinder or any sort of other different machines, but that's a whole nother conversation. Alright, now we have our second coffee brewed. This one was actually made using ghost peppers. I don't think I've ever actually had ghost peppers in anything, so this will be interesting. Once again, it doesn't smell super spicy, versus the bag really does. Cheers, my friend. Cheers. This is really enjoyable, isn't it? Yeah, I'm really glad we're doing this together. So Steve, one of the most popular questions that we got is in regards to dialing in a coffee. Because once you start getting into coffee brewing, you quickly realize that you can't brew one coffee the exact same way as another and expect to get perfect results. You'll need to make changes in grind settings and ratios and recipes and all these things, and that can be frustrating for people just getting into coffee that don't want to waste this bag of coffee that they just spent all of their money on. And so our question for you is, when you have a brand new coffee that you are working with, what is your approach to dialing that coffee in? Where do you start with grind size and recipe, and how do you adjust that to get the best cup possible? It's a great question. You're a great interviewer, Steven. So what I would recommend for most people is that over time, you will start to develop a sort of base recipe whenever you open a new coffee. So as an example, I know that I can use this amount of coffee brewed using this grind setting on my grinder with this brewer, using this amount of water and this amount of time. And so whenever you open up a new bag of coffee, you can start with that base recipe and taste it and determine how to best adjust that recipe to improve the flavor of that particular coffee. Now, tasting is a completely different conversation. That's actually going to be a future question I have for you. Oh, how convenient. And for you personally, what does that recipe look like? Do you have a favorite brewer or any other favorite tools to help you get a great cup of coffee? Yeah, for sure. I mean, I am fortunate in my position to be able to play with a lot of different coffee brewing gear, but I do have one that I stick to, and that's a Hario V60. It's one of the first pour-overs that I bought like 10 years ago, and it's brewed some of the best cups of coffee that I've ever had. My exact recipe with it will change based on how much coffee I'm brewing, and then also I'm rotating a bunch of grinders, so the actual settings may change. But I usually brew with a 1:16 ratio, meaning say 20 grams of coffee to 320 mils or grams of water. And I aim for that to finish in about a 3-minute brew time. Okay, so that's for drip coffee or filter coffee. What about for espresso? So espresso is super finicky with so many more variables, and I think that is why most home baristas are drawn towards espresso. It's more of a challenge, and with so many variables that you can control and manipulate to achieve the beverage you're looking for, I think that really draws a lot of people in. So all that being said, I usually start espresso with a 20-gram dose, 40-gram yield, and aiming for that to finish in about 30 seconds. But the problem with espresso is that though that recipe could be a great shot using one coffee, using another it could be absolutely terrible. But I guess that's part of the fun of it all. Now last up we have the Xxxtra Insane Spicy with Carolina Reaper peppers. Yeah, this is definitely the first time I've ever had Carolina Reaper, and the caution tape on the side of the bag is a little intimidating, but based on the last two, I think I'll be okay. Well, let's give it a shot. A final cheers. Cheers. We're in this together, Steven. Steven, there's truly no one I'd rather be here with. Now, earlier you mentioned using taste to adjust the recipe of a coffee to get a better tasting cup. But how would you recommend someone learn to taste coffee and develop their palates? And then after that, how would one even use their ability to taste coffee to improve our cup of coffee? Well, the first piece of advice I really received when I was trying to develop my palate was to constantly taste. Because coffee can taste like so many things. I mean, you walk into a coffee shop and there's these bags on the shelf that have all these different tasting notes, things like chocolate, caramel, vanilla, strawberry, citrus, but you're not going to be able to pick out any of those flavors in coffee if you've never really focused on what you're experiencing when you're eating chocolate or you are eating a strawberry and so on. Moving on from there, the next best thing that developed my coffee tasting palate was to taste a bunch of different coffees right next to each other. There's something about going directly from tasting one coffee to another and comparing them. I was at the height of my coffee tasting abilities when I was working in a coffee roastery, and every day I had to taste, say, 10 different coffees right next to each other. And you start to notice these little details when you're going directly from one to another. Things like, oh, this cup tastes like it has a little more acidity to it, or this one tastes more like fruit, or this one tastes more like chocolate. And then moving on from there, if you say have a cup of coffee that tastes fruity, then you can start to think, okay, what fruit does this taste like? Does it taste like a strawberry? Does it taste like an orange or even a banana? And all this takes a lot of time, but if you really care about it and you keep practicing, you will definitely notice an improvement over time if you keep at it. All right, so before we finish up, I have some rapid questions from our viewers. First up, best milk for espresso-based beverages. Taste and texture-wise, I would probably say whole milk, but for this guy down here, I would probably say oat or almonds. Any suggestions for different beans based on cold brew or espresso? So I don't really buy or recommend coffee based on brewing method because really any coffee can be used for any brewing method. There is no espresso only coffee. Any coffee can be used for espresso, any coffee can be used for cold brew. It more just comes down to what sort of coffees do you like. So if someone was to come to me and say, what sort of coffee should I get for espresso? If I asked you what kind of espresso you like and you say, I like something more chocolatey and dark and rich, I wouldn't recommend, say, a light roasted Kenyan for you. So there are certain coffees that will bring out different qualities based on the brewing method, but you can use any coffee for any brewing method. If you're not sure what to buy, just ask the local barista and hopefully they will help you out. How about the best way to store coffee beans? Away from direct sunlight and not exposed to any oxygen. Oxygen is going to be coffee's worst enemy, so whatever way that you can get rid of oxygen or at least have a minimal impact will be best. Flavored syrups in coffee, yay or nay? I don't like flavored coffees that use syrups. Usually those are going to be using lower quality coffee and crappy flavored oils to flavor the coffee. If you want to put flavor in your drinks, like a flavored latte, do whatever you want. I don't care. And there you have it. Steve Holm taking on the HomeGrounds challenge and living to tell the tale. Now there's nothing left to do but pull out the red carpet for you. This camera. Let the people know what you have going on. This YouTube channel that you are currently watching this video on. Thank you so much for watching, and Steven, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, Steve.